those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Welcome to Ask the Experts radio show, proudly sponsored by board-certified family law attorney Tina Lewert of Lewert Law, LLC. Sit back for the next half hour as host Steve-O interviews top experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Steve-O offers such educational topics as community association law, family law, chiropractic care, employment law, healthcare law, and public insurance adjusting. Interviews by top experts in their field. And now, here's your host, Steve-O.
Hey, good evening and welcome to Ask the Experts. I'm your host, Steve-O. This show has been running now 7 years. Can you believe it? And it is still, without a doubt, one of the hottest talk shows, especially when it comes to education. And we have tonight two top attorneys. Our first show, you're going to love the first show because it's about employment law. And we have one of the top employment attorneys in the state of Florida. She can't say this, but I can. But we're going to be talking, of course, we're going to talk about COVID. And listen, there's just not enough that we can say in 30 minutes, but we're going to give it a shot. Let me welcome. I love this woman. She's smiling. I can't believe it. I got her to smile. It's Grady Legal. And we have Jackie, who's with us tonight. And what's so amazing, and she'll be on with us again when she does her healthcare law. So I am so glad we have you, and welcome. And how do you like the setup?
Steve, it's great. This is, the new way of doing business.
I know. So, you know what? For the people who didn't catch your show last time, tell people about your practice and include about healthcare too.
Sure. Yeah. So Grady Legal, we're a firm that practices throughout the state of Florida. We handle all issues regarding labor and employment, as well as healthcare. So we look at issues like how healthcare plans affect the employer's bottom line. We do those sorts of analysis. We help them fight claims, surprise medical bills, that sort of thing. We do it for employers, employees. We also do it for individuals who may not have insurance and get caught with, an unexpected medical expense.
Okay. How long have you been in practice for?
I've been doing this, I've been practicing 21 years now.
Wow.
So now I'm aging myself. Thanks, Steve.
Wait a minute. You look too young. Wait. You've been practicing for 21 years?
I certainly have. I graduated University of Pittsburgh School of Law in the year 2000.
And I got to tell you, Jackie is going to be doing a show with us on healthcare law in our Philadelphia market. I know some of you all tune into that show. Jackie, wow, times are so different now with COVID. And I just heard the president speak just now, and I'm wondering how this is going to, and I'm going off our sheet right now, but there's a lot of people who don't want to get this vaccination, and that's up to them. That's straight. But he has set down some new guidelines tonight that for the military, for healthcare, and people who have over 100 employees.
Sure.
I mean, what is going to happen? And then now also there's 9 million people out there who've been out of work, who've been collecting unemployment, who now have to go back to work.
Correct. And
where do you want to start?
It's a lot to unravel. I know that this whole pandemic really caught everybody by surprise. No one's prepared for it, right? No one does that contingency planning. And so everyone's had to adapt on the fly. And I know there's been a lot of questions. We discussed it in our last show, but the vaccine mandates by employers is actually permissible, notwithstanding religious and disability medical exemptions to that. But overall, employers are permitted to mandate a vaccine. I know there are a lot of personal beliefs and controversy over that, but at the end of the day, the employers are legally permitted to do that.
Right.
That certainly hasn't changed. And I think that's what the president's doing with the federal workers and the military and that sort of thing.
Well, Jackie, what's going to happen? I mean, I'm already hearing there's a shortage of nurses, and I've seen maybe 5 or 6 nurses who went on the internet to say they're just going to give up their job. I mean, what's going to happen for these people that are? I mean, you can't just teach someone to be a nurse in one day.
Well, I think this has been a long time coming. I don't think the shortage of nurses is something new.
Okay.
I know this has been an issue for going on for quite some time. Obviously, when we were asking our medical professionals to go above and beyond with the amount of COVID cases that are coming in, it's draining. I mean, it's a lot of hours, and I think there's a sense of frustration among our medical professionals because a lot of these people could be prevented had they been able to get the vaccine or had they gotten the vaccine. And I just think there's frustration and some burnout. Like I said, nobody was prepared for the pandemic. And I know it sounds sort of counterintuitive, but I don't think our healthcare system was ready for it either. And understandably so. Nobody knows what that pandemic is going to look like. Nobody understands in what form it's going to take, whether it's going to be like an Ebola virus or something like COVID. And so trying to adapt to that has really been a strain for everybody in healthcare.
So when it comes to employment law, you represent both sides.
I do. We provide a comprehensive sort of look because obviously employers who provide healthcare benefits to their employees, there's a benefit being provided to those employees. And
Exactly.
Great companies have great employees. And in order to make sure your employees, are happy and have the motivation, it's important to make sure that their healthcare plans make sense. So yes, we work with both of them in tandem, and we've developed ways to sort of isolate employee medical information from employers, so we're not sharing sensitive data, sensitive information, and yet helping employers navigate their healthcare plans by understanding what their needs of their employees are.
Well, somebody had asked me this, why I'm asking you. So if you have a discrimination case or an overtime case, sexual harassment, do you handle those cases on the employee side?
Yes, I do. I
Okay.
primarily handle those cases on the employee side, yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, so now a lot of people, are you finding, are still working remote?
So it's been a mixed bag. I know there's been, earlier this summer, I think everybody thought COVID was sort of over and reopened offices and were requiring people to come back. And then the numbers started to spike again. And we've resorted back a little bit to, I think, remote working. It has certainly become, it was necessary a year ago. A lot of workforces went remote. Now there's sort of this hybrid model where some employers are saying, yes, you have to come back. Some are saying, no, you can stay home, and then a little bit of both. So there's really been sort of a mishmash of policies coming out, and employers are trying to navigate these new times. And now you also have employees who want to work and may have some childcare issues, right? So they still have to stay home with their children. And they're asking to work remotely. So there's been a lot of upheaval with the workforce and where everyone is working.
So are there issues that employers should be concerned with these employees remotely working?
Yes, the biggest one that I see, and this again goes before COVID, but I think we're going to see it a much larger issue now. If you're paying somebody hourly, even if they are logged, they're off the clock, right? So they've said, I've clocked out, but you still have them sending emails or using this technology, using their cell phones, they technically still have to be paid. There's this big misunderstanding that if I tell somebody, you're working 9 to 5 from home, and yet you are aware that they're still working at 7, 8 o'clock at night, you still have to pay them for their hourly rate wages. And if they exceed those 40 hours within a work week, you now have to pay them time and a half. And a lot of employers are not aware of that.
Wow. I didn't even know there was still time and a half.
There is, and it's a big issue because employees are taking it upon themselves because we have this technology. Everyone's got a cell phone in their hand,
Right.
And they're shooting emails off at 10 o'clock at night. They can come back with a claim and say, well, I was working, you didn't pay me. By all these extra minutes and hours, I went over my 40 hours, you didn't pay me time and a half. And that's a big wage and hour no that employers have to guard against.
Can an employer require a person to work remotely?
They can, absolutely. It's, every workplace can come up with their own policies. Logistically, it might be a challenge. You have to ask the person to have, obviously internet connection, maybe Wi-Fi, that sort of thing. So every employer has to navigate that and whether it works for their workforce. But yes, they can require people to work remotely.
I used to have an employment show that I did in Austin, and it was really crazy the things I learned on there. But one of the biggest things I learned, Jackie, was that this law firm would help employers put together their employee guide.
Correct.
You do that?
Handbook, yes. I do
The
do
handbook.
that. It's critical. I mean, it's the rules and it's the policies of the company. And what it does is it really, takes out any subjectivity about what is allowed and not allowed within the workplace. So you have to make sure that you have a handbook with strong policies, but more importantly, you follow those policies. You can't, give somebody a free pass and say, well, you're going to be allowed to take more time off than someone else. You have to apply those policies evenly across the board to all employees.
Well, have you you've done these handbooks, these guides for employers before. Don't you have to start all over again now with everything? Whether it's mask or vaccinate, whatever it is, there's a lot of things now with the pandemic. I would think you'd need to add to that.
Oh, absolutely. And pandemic notwithstanding, it's always a good practice to review your policies and make sure it's still up to date. It's still applicable to your workforce.
How often, Jackie?
My suggestion is you should look at it at least every 5 years or any time that you've had a significant change within your business, right? So maybe you've grown substantially or maybe you haven't. Maybe you've had a layoff, business hasn't been going so well. And you have to take a look and make sure that your requirements are still, in compliance with federal law, state laws, local laws. So I'm always advocating for those reviews, especially every 5 years, just to make sure you're still up to date with what changes are with laws. But again, making sure too that if your needs have changed as an employer, your employee needs have changed, that you're accommodating that as well.
So we're going to go to break now, but before we go to break, I want to tell everybody something. If you own a business, most businesses don't have a full-time employment lawyer working for them. I am telling you, you need to give Jackie a call tomorrow. You need to check on all of your business, because there could be some things that you're missing that Jackie's going to catch. So give her a call tomorrow at 754-333-0313. And listen, it's not going to hurt to sit down with you for an hour or so and see if there's changes that need to be made, policy changes, because things are different now and they keep changing. Am I right?
Absolutely. One of the big issues I see Biden sort of pushing for is to eliminate non-competes in a lot of different industries. So that's a perfect example of, if you have a non-compete agreement for your employees, it might be time to revisit that. Is that something that's still going to be enforceable? If it is enforceable, does it need to be changed? Like that's a perfect example of something that, companies need to revisit and look at and make sure that what they have is still going to hold up in court.
Good. We're going to go to break. We're here with Jackie Grady. She owns the firm Grady Legal. You mostly do employment law, but you're also doing healthcare law now too.
Well, it's the mashup of labor, employment, and healthcare because they all intersect. And, I did it before COVID, and COVID really has shown the need to make sure that everybody is on board with what their healthcare plans are looking like.
Okay, we're going to go to break. We'll be right back.
Thanks.
Grady Legal PA is a boutique labor, employment, and healthcare firm serving clients throughout Florida. Founded by Jacqueline Grady, Grady Legal is helping companies and individuals fight back against the predatory billing schemes of America's healthcare system and insurance carriers. Jacqueline is at the forefront of these emerging legal issues and was featured in the Wall Street Journal for her efforts to combat inflated hospital charges. For over 20 years, Jacqueline Grady has assisted businesses and employees in navigating the various federal and state laws governing discrimination, overtime pay, and fiduciary duty under healthcare plans. If your health insurance premiums are exploding, deductibles increasing, and are still receiving surprise medical bills, contact Grady Legal PA as a high percentage of bills contain incorrect or fraudulent charges. If you want an evaluation of whether there has been a violation of discrimination or wage laws, contact Grady Legal today at 754-333-0313, 754-333-0313. We are back now with more of the Ask the Experts radio show, proudly sponsored by board-certified family law attorney Tina Lewert of Lewert Law LLC, covering South Florida.
And we are back. This is the Ask the Expert show. We're on every Thursday night from 6 to 7 drive time, kind of bring you home at night. We're here with Jackie Grady of the Grady Legal Law Firm. And, it doesn't matter if you're in Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, wherever you are, because you're doing a lot of business like we're doing right now by Zoom.
Absolutely. Stay at home and get your free 15-minute consult via Zoom.
So we're talking, of course, about COVID. And what are there rights that an employer has that relates to face mask?
Yes, I'm advising employers, look at your workplace. Is it possible for people to socially distance? If not, then masks should be worn. The employers are allowed to mandate vaccines. I have a lot of companies that are hesitant to do that because they just don't feel comfortable requiring that. So a wonderful alternative is requiring face masks to be worn at all times, and unless you can be socially distanced, from people. And again, it's not a one size fits all because every company is different. Every workplace is different, whether people have individual offices, cubicles, or close proximity to one another.
Same thing with the vaccine?
Correct. And like I said, it is legal for an employer to allow the vaccine, but I do know a lot of employers that don't want to go that. That seems a very, drastic decision to make. If it's going to upset their employees. Again, you want to have happy employees because they're going to be more productive. So I try to find that middle ground. I try to advise, our employers on finding that way to say, you don't have to mandate the vaccine. You can encourage it. You can provide incentives for it. But at the end of the day, if you can get around it by requiring masks, distancing, allow maybe flexible hours for people to work from home so you don't have more people in the office, then do that. And that way you can eliminate a draconian requirement for vaccine.
Are any of your clients actually testing people, their employees?
They are not actively administrating the tests, and I wouldn't think that would be a good idea, unless they're in the healthcare field. But what I do see is requiring employees to go and get tested elsewhere, and come back in with those test results.
How often do you think they should ask for those results?
I do see policies where, once a week, if you don't have the vaccine, you have to get tested once a week to come in and show that you have a negative COVID test.
So, what are the ramifications can employers and employees see regarding COVID and health claims? Somebody who gets, I guess, COVID at work, do they have a claim?
That's going to be interesting. I don't know if that's going to fall into a workers' comp if there's, a COVID outbreak, and whether or not you can really zero it into I got it at work versus the grocery store, the bank, or what have you. So I think I would anticipate we're going to see those types of cases come out of this. What I do think we're going to see are changes to healthcare benefits. I know there's been some rumblings with insurance carriers saying that they are not going to provide coverage for unvaccinated employees who go into the hospital because of a COVID illness. And, obviously exempting those who have religious or medical reasons to not get the vaccine. If someone just doesn't want to get the vaccine and they end up having to go into the ICU for a week, I am hearing rumblings of insurance carriers saying we're not going to cover that.
Wow. Can they do that?
They absolutely can do that. I mean, your health insurance policy already has exclusions, right? We typically see mental health exclusions, facelift type exclusions. I mean, so there are exclusions already in healthcare plans. And I think some of these healthcare plans are looking to make this an exclusion as well, because the claims for COVID are ranging $50,000 and upwards, because, typically people are in the hospital for several days, if not for several weeks.
Jackie, I got to ask you this question. One of my favorite movies is John Q.
Yes.
Did you see the movie?
I have seen the movie.
So here's a guy who thought he was covered through his work and didn't even realize it until his son had to have an emergency operation. But he apparently wasn't even told that they'd changed insurance companies. And that's what really changed things.
Yeah, so John Q, he should have called me, because what happened there in this case is it was a violation of a federal law called ERISA. ERISA governs all sorts of plan or benefits provided by employers, such as 401k, pensions, also healthcare benefits. And there is a duty under ERISA that if you make changes to the healthcare plan, you have to notify the employees.
Wow. And didn't you tell me that a lot of the health insurance companies are not going to cover COVID?
Like I said, they are talking. There are those discussions. I mean, obviously, they go by plan years. So, for instance, your health insurance goes from January 1st of 2021 through December 31st. What they're looking at is changing that plan, effective January 1st, 2022. So you might have coverage now, but starting in January 2022, they may not cover COVID-related hospital stays for the unvaccinated.
And doesn't your employer have to tell you that?
The employer
so there's no surprises?
So, and this is where it becomes a little tricky. The employers have to tell you that, but you know what they tell you? They give you the handbook. And we have all gotten the handbook and tossed it in the trash, right? We don't realize we really need to read it and know what our benefits are, what our coverages are, and what our responsibilities are.
Well, I'm going to let you go a little long on this one, because it's probably one of the most important questions I ask you tonight. As an employer, why should I retain your firm?
So you should retain my firm because you're probably paying too much for health insurance. Our premiums are based upon claims. Okay, it's unlike property insurance, where there's that theory that property insurance companies don't want to pay claims, or like your automobile insurance, they don't want to pay the claims, they just want to collect the premium. It's a little different with health insurance. Under the Affordable Care Act, a health insurance company has to spend 80 cents of every dollar on medical care. So that means 20% is left for their administrative costs, their marketing, their salaries, what have you. So in order to increase that amount of that 20%, they actually have to increase the amount that they pay out on claims. So it sounds a little counterintuitive, but if they actually pay more, they get to pocket more. So they have less of an incentive to make sure that the claims are being handled and administrated correctly to actually they don't want to lessen the claims. Now, take that one step further, those claims drive those premiums. They're looking at your claim history to come up with how much you need to pay in premiums. So the more you have in claims, the more they can charge in premiums.
Wow. And this is basically all you do. I mean, your shingle doesn't have criminal law, personal injury law, bankruptcy. This is what you do.
Correct. And it started, about 4 or 5 years ago, people calling with these strange bills. We call them the surprise medical bills. And, the common things I hear is, I have the best health insurance, and I went to my hospital that was in network, and yet I still got this bill. Because a lot of people are not informed about who's really covered under their insurance plan, and they end up getting these surprise medical bills. So that's where we come in. We help the individual. And employers are starting to recognize that if their employees are worried about how they're paying these medical bills, or if they're not going to the doctor because they're afraid of medical bills, that creates a stress. It becomes a distraction. They're less effective at work. They're less productive. So we're helping employers actually have more productive employees because they know that they're taken care of medically.
Jackie, you're so good. Give everybody your phone number and your website address.
Sure thing. Yeah, you can call us at 754-333-0313, and our web address is www.gradylegal.com.
Call her tomorrow, set up an appointment, tell her you heard it on the Ask the Expert show, and we'll see you again soon.
Looking forward to it, Steve.
Thanks, Jackie. And we're going to
Thank
go
you.
to break. And we come back, we've got our estate planning attorney. We'll be right back.
Grady Legal PA is a boutique labor